Uh, Ladies, gentlemen, gamers, and fellow show enthusiasts, welcome back. I recently saw the hit new show, although it's not so new, Gen V, a continuation slash sister show, I guess, to The Boys, the hit Amazon show, which is now going to be price increased unless you don't want ads, or unless you want ads. Then you have to pay the same price. Anyway, I recently saw it and I thought I would give my little review and opinions on it. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I don't know how much I'm going to edit this because I am feeling extra lazy as of recent. Of course, that's what being unemployed does to you, but regardless, I thought I would give my 2 cents on the show in general. So, what do I think of Gen V? Now, I will be peppering in some very light spoilers for both The Boys and Gen V. Mostly Gen V, but I will touch on The Boys a little bit for this review. So, anyway, what do I think of Gen V? Overall, I actually really liked the show for what it was and how it showed a different side of the universe of The Boys. So, Gen V is basically following the path or the story of Marie Monroe. That's our main character. There's other characters that pop up as well, but Marie Monroe is basically the main character, and she is a superpowered person. Now, we start the show off seeing her very young, and then we see a little bit of as she gets older, but essentially, most of the story is smack dab in college. Gen V is about Marie going to college. Now, Marie has her own little backstory, but for the most part, I won't touch on that because that's spoilers. For the most part, though, what I like about Gen V that wasn't really in The Boys was if you like the superheroes, well, heroes in quotations, and if you like the superpowers, you are going to get a whole bunch of that in Gen V because we basically follow a superpowered person, aka Marie. And the college she actually goes to is one of the most prestigious colleges for super people. And I actually find it really funny that they call them super people, not superheroes. And that's touched on in the show a little bit, but we'll get to that later on. So it shows a lot more superpowers and how they are in basically everyday life, which for me is the main drawing point that I really liked about, The Boys. Obviously, I like the characters in The Boys as well, Huey, Billy Butcher, and all the other ones. But one thing I really, really enjoyed, which I wish they showed more, was just the superpowers and how they interacted in normal society. And there is no lack of that here. Essentially because we're watching super people 24/7. It basically, as long as there's a person on screen, 99% chance they're superpowered, and if there's a bunch of people, there's always someone superpowered basically there or nearby. We get no less of that in this show, which is really good. It's always there, which I liked. Anyway, it has what you would expect, which ironically is the unexpected. That's, I think, what the Amazon shows do best, especially with Omni-Man, their other hit show. They definitely grip you in the first couple episodes. I mean, The Boys already gripped you in with the start of that. I'm not going to spoil that, but Omni-Man gripped you in episode 1, The Boys gripped you in episode 1, and I would say Gen V, you're probably coming into it obviously watching The Boys. If you're not, what are you doing? But you're coming in kind of knowing, or at least I kind of knew, okay, some stuff is going to happen that's either going to be crazy, gory, or gross. And guess what? It happens. You don't know exactly what it's going to be, but you know it's going to be there, and that is there. And it actually happens, as with the other shows, very early. There's some crazy scene with tits and cock out, and I mean the whole cock too. We're not like pulling any punches here. So eventually, who knows when this is going to become old and not surprising anymore. But for now, it's a little expected, but you still don't know where they're going to take it. And the creators know to hit you fast and hard, and they definitely do because that shit hits you early. So the unexpected is expected here, but it's not, it hasn't worn out from its novelty, I would say. So that's pretty good. But it is in the show. The same thing as The Boys. The Boys is pretty gory. I would say this is really gory because, again, we're following super people. Now, the show's name should already give away that it's meant to be a play on the new generation, Gen Z. It's kind of supposed to be for young people. So there's obviously a lot of themes in here for adults. I mean, it's a very adult show. It's not meant for kids, but it's definitely meant on the younger side of adults. Even though they show a lot of cock and violence very early on, there's enough jokes here, and the whole vibe and attitude of what they pick at and what they do, and the environment they're in, because they're in college. Uh, it makes it very appealing to younger adults, I would say. So it's pretty good in that sense. I definitely felt very included. It tackles a lot of current day issues. Now, even though it's geared towards younger adults, one thing that it does also, that the boys also does well, is it tries to be self-aware, and it tries to address, like I said, big points in today's society that are sort of I would say it splits people down the middle. Let's just call it like that, especially stuff that's popular in the media. So all throughout the show, which, again, this does happen in The Boys. I just want to keep that forward here. We're always seeing how everything is essentially manufactured and how everything has to do with not really being about being a superhero, but it's more about ratings and approval and money. It's basically all fake. In general, it's just fakeness and business. So there's other shows out there, especially Rick and Morty is like the biggest one, where they try to be on the nose and they try to be self-aware. And from what I heard about Rick and Morty, they basically went too far with it. Rick and Morty's not good. Now, I don't know, I haven't seen it, but at least recently. But I think this show very much goes close to that line. The Boys gets close to it, but Gen V gets extremely close to it. But it's not like Rick and Morty where they go over it. I think they teeter near it, but they never go over it. So it's a very good show. You know they're self-aware. They know they're self-aware, especially with the jokes they make, especially with the current day jokes they make. And a lot of the character casting and the situations they're put in, the way the characters are, they're there for a reason. And the show knows they're there for a reason. And the characters even mention it. It's part of the script, but it works well. I don't feel like it's too forced and it's not going over the line where it's too self-aware. So that's pretty good. So the next thing I want to talk about is the characters. I think overall all the characters were great. I liked all of them. Now, in this show, you're going to have your stereotypical college personalities that you're going to see. There's going to be a person who gossips and tries to use people. There's going to be a guy who's always on drugs. There's going to be jocks. There's always going to be these stereotypical people. But similar to what they did with being self aware, I think they go close to the line, but they do it in such a right way where it's not a bad thing. Because they're going to be there, and it feels normal because they are supposed to be there. These are the people you would see in college. Obviously, they're stereotypical, but they're done right. And I think that's really good. The one character, though, I do want to say really impressed me, and I will name drop her here. It's not too much of a spoiler, but light spoilers. It's the dean. Her name is Shetty, which I called Shitty. I think Dean Shetty does an amazing job in the show of seeming weak, but she's actually really strong. Now, she's not a super powered person. She's actually a regular person, but of all the characters that subverted my expectations, I think she did it the best. I think Dean Shetty so many times to me seemed on the back foot, but then she pulled something out of her ass and something from her sleeve and she comes back. And she's very, very good at it. And I really, really liked it. Because it goes to show, even if you're a human in the superpowered world, you still have stuff you can do if you're smart. And Dean Shetty definitely portrays that a lot. I really, really liked her. So, aside from the end, because that's going to be a sour point later on, aside from the characters near the end, a lot of them actually felt likable to me. And one thing I will praise the series for is as the series goes on, as the episodes are chugging along, the characters do evolve and there is character progression. Now, oftentimes there is character progression in other shows, but it doesn't really make sense. In this show, I felt like it actually makes sense. A lot of the stuff just hits right. The whole main cast I loved, even if it's not something that's a novel change, even if it's something that you could kind of see, coming and you can kind of easily guess it, I still think it's a good change. And again, it just makes sense. A lot of these things that are here, it's not necessarily new, but it's stuff that you would agree with, and they do it well. That's pretty much the whole vibe I got. Anyway, that's a lot of the positives. I think, I don't want to make this go too long, but I think the show was very, very good. However, there were some glaring negatives I do have to say about it. The biggest glaring negative of this show is the length. I think that Gen V only being 8 episodes really, really, really hurt it extremely. I felt like during the show, especially towards the end, some stuff was definitely rushed. Some characters, and I'm not going to name who, but towards the end, essentially sides come out. and some characters switch sides randomly. And they tried to make it make sense with some quick justifications, but it seems like they just didn't have enough time to at least make that land. Everything else lands well, except characters just randomly switching sides, especially with the nature of the characters. It felt really, really rushed. Towards the end, so many of the characters ends up switching sides that there's essentially two sides where it feels like because of the time constraints, they weren't given enough time flesh out why they were switching sides. And the sad part is they tried to. You see in the series that they tried to do it, but for the sake of plot, it seems like they really just rushed it because they tried to fit everything into 8 episodes. It's like the whole series, this character loves that one, and this one tries to prove themselves. And there's so many episodes where they remain consistent. But during the final couple episodes, especially the final one, it's like they just switch up and now they don't care about all these things they were doing, or like these things don't matter to them, these people don't matter to them, the relationship just completely changes. It almost feels like they're different people, or like someone took a needle and shoved them with like insane juice or something. I don't understand it, and I definitely felt like if they had more time they could have made it land better, because they tried to. It just didn't land well. Like they really needed more time. But anyway, aside from that, I only have a couple more gripes. That was probably the biggest negative about the series I could have talked about. The other gripes, and some of these are in the boys as well, is that people are just always evil. Now, the universe is very dark. It's getting sort of cliched. Now, all of the college stuff, all of the actual main cast stuff isn't really cliched. It's just the overall arcing universe and some side characters here and there. It's like when you think a character is good, most of the time because we're in this universe and they are the way they are, that they're gonna be evil. It always happens. There's very, very little exceptions to this in both the boys and in Gen V, but there's times where like you see characters and they're nice, and it's very rare to see an actual nice character because they try and do this little bait and switch with you, same way where they do with the shock factor of like the nasty, gory stuff in the beginning, where eventually how long is it gonna be before it wears out its novelty, but they try and always do this bait and switch where you think, oh, these people are good. But if you've watched, all of the boys, you kind of know what to expect, where it's like, okay, they're too good to be true. Very rarely will they actually be good. Most of the time, okay, they're either secretly evil or they just turn out to be evil from the actions that occur, through character development, which is good. But again, near the end, it felt a little rushed with some of the characters becoming randomly evil. But anyway, very little characters are actually good in the series. They do exist, but it's very little. Now, the other gripe I have, which I was thinking it was a small one, but it's a pretty decent sized one, honestly. The other negative is all the shit that happens in the world, right? This is kind of like a two-faceted thing. Number one, how the fuck do they cover it up from the public? And number two, how are people okay with this, right? One of the common themes that they touch on is like, oh no, the media is bad, people are sheep, they could be convinced of everything, social media controls people, it's very influential, and people are stupid. And it does show it well, and I do think it's true in real life too. Basically, they say you can convince them of anything and spin anything, but it gets to the point where it's like, come on. When it gets to the levels it's going to in the series, it's really, really hard to suspend your disbelief at certain points. Like, people are escaping mental asylums, nukes are going off, people are getting killed nonstop in public, indiscriminately, randomly. Random fights just break out, and it's not normal people fights. These are super people fights where it's a college campus filled with superpowers. And it gets bloody, it gets lethal. There's so much death, destruction, pandemonium. Sometimes it's like, how can they cover this up when it's happening in broad daylight on such a massive scale? And the biggest thing I question past that, because, VOD could always cover anything. The biggest thing I question is, after people see this, why are they okay with sending their children to this place with so much wanton destruction and violence happening? It just seems actually insane to me. It's so bad that major people in the main series from The Boys are seeing the stuff happen, they're reacting to it, Some of them need to get involved in the nonsense, and then even they're at risk from potentially getting seriously hurt or dying. And then, afterward, the next day or whatever, everyone's doing fine, and no one changes anything how things are done. Like, let's just say in the college campus, there's like a death, right? A death would be pretty common, especially with all these powerful, super, people. And they're young people, they are on hormones, they're on drugs, they're on God knows what else. So there's obviously going to be accents, but this is where there's so much stuff that ends up happening, again, in a massive scale where it's like, how can people think this is normal? Nothing changes. Even the parents who are not superpowered hear about this, see this, know this, and it's just like they don't care, or like they didn't hear it somehow. They put their fucking fingers in theirs and went la 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 la. We don't know what's going on. It doesn't make any sense sometimes. But aside from that, there are some problems with that, especially with suspending your disbelief when it's that bad. But aside from that, that's pretty much the only gripes I could get. Overall, just to reiterate, despite me going in depth on those gripes, those are really the only things I could pick out. The acting was amazing, the story was really good. I actually thought Gen V wasn't going to be related at all to the boys. I thought it was going to be its own isolated thing, and for the most part, it is. But it definitely serves a purpose, and it kind of shows, ironically enough, what the human side is doing also. Because even though it focuses on the super people, the super, I want to say teens, but they are adults, the super adults in college, it still shows like kind of more about how the humans react to them. Because you're seeing a lot of the super people, but it definitely has a place. It's definitely important for the boys. They might bring stuff in there, and the boys definitely ties into it a lot. There are cameos, there are people that come in from the boys, and it matters. And I thought it wouldn't, and I'm surprised at how much it did. But again, overall, I actually really liked the show. Those gripes were there, but aside from just, the suspension of disbelief problem, all the other gripes weren't really that bad, except near the end where it felt a little too crazy, a little too rushed. Overall, really liked it. If I had to rate it, I would rate it 7.5 Homelanders out of 10. Can't wait for season 2 because we know there's going to be one, especially with how they ended it. But I definitely recommend people watch it, and I definitely recommend people watch my stream at Twitch TV/Tecnics channel. And I hope everyone enjoyed. Mickey Mouse is public domain now.